to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Shall you call the roll, please?
Reib. Here. Bellows.
Here.
Swecker.
Here.
Little.
Here.
LeBeau. Here.
We have a full house this evening. We begin with item 3, citizens' comment, making the statement that our citizens, our residents come first in this community. If there's anyone who would like to address the council this evening, you may address the podium. State your name and your address, please.
And I do think, especially in these economic times, if you can have fewer municipal employees and more private employees, isn't that kind of what we're all aiming at? To reduce the size of government, to reduce the size of, and let the private sector take over. Because I do believe they can offer you a better product at a better price. And it was kind of funny because before I came here, I was talking to my brother-in-law who lives in town here too, and he had just come from Cub in Apple Valley, or in Rosemont. He bought some beer over in Rosemont, some Busch beer. He paid $13 or $12.99 a case. And before I came here, I went to the liquor store right here. It's $14.99 a case. And I asked the lady, I said, do you guys match your prices? And she goes, no, we don't. And it's just, I mean, everybody's got to do their own game. But I mean, I think it's something that has to be looked at, because I don't think, and I know cities have done it for a long time. I know it's a moneymaker for them, but I think that there's other ways of doing it, and I think it's really unfair. I mean, if you can make money on that, you can make money selling shoes too. You can make money selling houses too. But that's not a municipality's business. You know, and as far as controlling the liquor, the kids aren't doing it. That's the officers' jobs. It's not the municipal. You know what I mean? That's just my view. So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. There may be other comments on that subject matter tonight, so I'd like to just say that I'd agree with you. It's a multi-factored equation. It needs to be studied. There has been a learning curve for me in terms of dealing with the regional media. And a couple stories I think were very unfortunate in terms of trying to communicate what my views are on municipal liquor. We are in the process of doing a comprehensive study. We are asking these questions. Number one, what are the legislative trends, legislative options in regarding municipal liquor? 2, what is the actual profitability? And then 3, if we have another opportunity for a Costco situation, how do we address that? So.
Marlo Illig, 17460 Highview. I was here at your working session Monday for the first time, and I was here at this meeting only once before. First of all, I got to thank you, sir, for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much. I'm here to do something real quickly. First of all, to remind us all of the state of the country, not just our little town of Lakeville, and finances. I learned today by listening that in 2007, the annual deficit of the USA was $161 billion a year. This date, it's $223 billion a month. Now, granted, that's federal, but everything starts somewhere, in spending and in saving. It does us no good to raise taxes or anything as such, or try to cut here or cut there, if we don't have a game that we're going to cut back on future spending. One of the greatest presidents we ever had, back in the 80s, cut taxes, and the deficit started to disappear. And then, however, the people running the country decided to continue spending, and it blew the hell out of everything. Anyone here knows what I'm talking about. So we've got to start doing something like that now. And I'm going to address one person here. Is Mr. Little here?
I'm right
there
here.
You are.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
This should be good.
I didn't mean to make that look like you're small. I'm small.
Yeah.
Last fall, prior to your election. You visited me, and amongst others. And I asked you 4 questions. I'm not going to go into all of them. But one of them was, Mr. Little, what are you going to do as a council person that I'm going to be proud of? And then I suggested, are you going to save me, the taxpayer, any money? Your answer to me was, and I'm paraphrasing here, well, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that I cut my salary. And
That's done.
you also said that I'm going to see to it that the expenditures amongst all of you would begin to be cut.
That's also been done.
Is the 5% unit that you were talking about on Monday night and others, is that going to be reached?
That was never. Let me back up.
Surely.
Absolutely. And are you finished? Because I'll address them all at one time. If you're
I'm sorry?
I'll address all your questions at one time if you're not done.
Very good.
Yeah. Oh, you're done. Okay.
Oh, I'm going to stand here, yes.
Well, let me say, certainly it's fine. Let's just let it go for now. I'll address him. So I don't remember our specific conversation, so I can't do that. But I have cut my salary. I donated 6 months of my salary at the work session that I believe you attended. We have cut the expense account for all city councilors and mayor, so that has also been done. And in 4 hours, we cut $160,000 out of the budget. So on average, that's $40,000 an hour, which is not so bad in my mind. So we'll continue to look for ways to save money, and I'm excited to do that in 2012 with technological updates, which I've been pushing. So I certainly appreciate your direct comments at me, but I think so far I've kept every promise I told you at the door. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else would like to address the council?
Girk, 10466, 175th Street. I rose tonight to talk about the work session that we had last Monday night. I apologize, I came a little late. I was a little tired. The item on the agenda, the part that we'll talk about is the part that was about the 5% cuts. And I want to specifically address just one part of it, but in general say we didn't reach the goal. The goal was 5%, and we did not reach it. And while I respect what you're saying, Mr. Little, you will still be working on it, but we really need to get to that goal very quickly. We have lots of other cost items coming. But specifically, I want to talk about something from 40 years of experience of council meetings. In my whole time of being here, I probably went to more meetings than most people. Most of you know that. But usually, when it came to taking money from the liquor fund, it was used for an item such as a piece of land, a large long-term building, a fixed asset that would be here for a long time. Just before you came on here, 2 years ago, our council was looking for cuts, and it was suggested that we pay off the long-term bonds on a park that's been around for a long time. I believe it was $100,000 a year for 4 years. We didn't do that. So when you came, Mr. Little, to that meeting and the agenda was cuts, and you came in the middle of the meeting late in the night, I agree. I thought it was 7:30 with a clock that wasn't running, but later in the night, probably 10 o'clock, and suggested in the police budget that we go to something that wasn't on the 11 budget to bring in, albeit maybe a good cause and a campaign promise. That was okay, except it was out of order. The order of that agenda was to make cuts in the 011 budget. So you propose that you bring someone to the police department basically as a stenographer, from what I understand of it. I don't really understand it very well. I don't doubt whether it's a good or bad thing. But we took the money from your salary, and that's commendable too. But we made a decision that night that we have never done before. We have never taken money from the liquor fund to pay for a salaried position. And I think we're going down a road that shouldn't have been done. Now, if I heard it right, Mr. Milkey, I think at least 2 times, maybe 3 in the conversation, you suggested that wasn't probably the right way to go. So I think when we go down that road and use that money on that, we are opening ourselves up to anyone wanting to do this. What's to stop me from coming and saying, instead of $4,000, I want to give 10, but I want the same proportion, and I want to donate to Mr. Mashad's Parks over here for fertilizer or for some other project. That's not a very good way of doing it. I think we can still accomplish the same task since it hasn't been voted on. It's a work session. I think some work on that before it comes to the council needs to be done. In addition to that, this is becoming totally dysfunctional down here. We had this for 4 years where I came to meetings that were dysfunctional. Some of you had the pleasure or displeasure to serve under that. We need to find a way to harness the talents of the young, the old, and everybody in this community to cut our cost. We ask budgets from directors to do this. I suggest we go back and ask the directors to ask their working staff to do this. Amongst the street departments that I know fairly well, the police departments, the park commissions people, and even Dennis's departments and Milky's departments, there have to be ways that within this community, using all the resources of the people we know in different towns, that we could come up with giant cuts. Because if we don't get this done quickly and get our residential real estate back on track, which was a precedent of how this stuff was all built, we won't have the revenue to pay for this. And it's only going to get worse, not better. Okay? I have one other item I want to bring up. I would like to know the amount of fuel capacity, if it's not a public record that can't be disclosed, that we have on hand. How many days of storage capacity do we have? If we were to get into a much more difficult situation in the Middle East, all the businesses that I own and know have at least 2 years storage supply. Every farm I own, every business I own has huge capacities for storage, or they know where that fuel's coming from. And I haven't heard that. Now, maybe that's got to do with some kind of policy on that, but I think we should know how much we have, where we're buying at, and what price. I don't want to end up paying $10 for diesel. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Mayor.
Steve.
Just one clarification. I appreciate Mr. Girk's comments. I just want to clarify what I said at the meeting. I did not say that it wasn't the right way to go. What I indicated was that it wasn't necessary because as you were cutting expenses in the general fund, the capacity existed to fund the rest of that position out of the general fund rather than the liquor fund. So it's just a simple clarification, although it's correct that we typically have not used liquor funds for general operating expenses. The discussion at the council meeting was to do that one time for the rest of this year, and then that position would go back into the general fund or be paid for by general fund. Just a clarification. Thank you.
And clarification that we will finalize that decision if we choose to in March.
Very good point, Mayor. The discussion that you held at the work session relative to the cuts will come to you in the form of a resolution at the next meeting, which will be a summary of all of the discussion of that night. Will culminate in a discussion by the council here as to whether or not you wish to actually make those adjustments to the budget. And as far as the fuel capacity, I don't have that with me tonight, but we will certainly get that to Mr. Girk.
Mayor Bells, may I have a few minutes to address the remarks as well?
Go ahead, council member.
Thank you. I think it's important to clarify that the 5% discussion we had was couched as an exercise. It was passed as an exercise. It was never something that we had unanimous consent to make 5% of cuts. And I think people that attended the work session or that were reading what happened from the work session can understand that 5% would be detrimental to the city. We're talking layoffs of police staff. We're talking closing the senior center. So 5% is nothing to shirk off about, I guess. I mean, this is something that would be massively bad for our city. So I think it's important to remember that. The second thing is that I know the gentleman said that I was out of order for presenting the police staff position, but again, there was unanimous consent to bring that up as no one objected. So in terms of rules of procedure, I think I was in line. Lastly, we do fund a chemical awareness specialist in the schools, and we have done that for quite some time. And as Mr. Milky said, we're only using liquor funds for this position for 6 months. So this is not something that will be done for 10 years. This is a short-term force to get this staffing person back on staff so that police can get back on the street and have more time. So appreciate Mayor allowing me to address those remarks. Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the council?
Can I re-address these questions?
Yes, you can.
It's not a debate.
It's not a debate, but we have a new council and we are open to citizens'